Is this an empty threat? Is it real? How exactly will this happen? What's the procedure? What's it going to look like? We're going to talk to a member of the United States Congress today on the show to find out exactly how that is going to happen. He'll be joining us in just a moment. We're also going to talk about the industry news of the day. That would be Brett Cooper leaving the Daily Wire. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Caitlyn Clark, WNBA star, went woke. Or did she? Maybe she's been woke all along. We're going to discuss exactly why she made the statement, which was a very critical race theorist statement today. And Senator John Fetterman is on Truth Social. We're going to read his first post and talk about all of that and more today on The Liz Wheeler Show. So let's start talking about mass deportations. Tom Homan, President Trump's appointment to be border czar, was in Chicago recently, and he talked about starting mass deportations in that fair city. This is what he said. Take a listen.
Chicago's in trouble because your mayor sucks and your governor sucks. And we're going to start right here in Chicago, Illinois. Now, if your Chicago mayor doesn't want to help, he can step aside. But if he impedes us, if he knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien, I will prosecute him.
And there you have it. That, I don't know about you, but that's the kind of nominee that I appreciate from President Trump. Okay, so we're going to bring in Congressman Chip Roy from the great state of Texas to talk about how this is going to work. Congressman, thanks for joining me, sir.
Great to be on, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you again. So this idea of mass deportations, what we can start big picture and then get more nitty gritty, but what is this going to look like? I love hearing stuff like that from Tom Homan, but I'm also interested in the procedure here.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tom Homan is a great friend. He's a fantastic pick by President Trump, and he will do an exceptional job in that role. He and I have worked together. He's come to my district. We went to Lukenbach, Texas together, which is in my district, with Willie and Waylon and the boys. But I'm extremely excited to work with Tom. Tom understands what needs to be done. When we talk about the removals, right, under our current law, we remove people who are here illegally, right, unlawfully. That's what we're talking about doing. This is not something that's like breaking new ground. It's not something that's, oh, this is new and different. What the only different thing about it is we have so many more people to deal with. That's it. So we're talking about removing people for good cause, right? They're here illegally. They're using up our social welfare system. They're criminals. They came here without even checking in. They were gotaways, whatever it is. There are lots of reasons why we remove people. So we will have to give and provide greater resources for Tom Homan and for the president and for his team to carry out what they need to do under ICE to enforce the law and start doing what they haven't done for 4 years, which is if you're here and you're unlawfully present, you're going to get removed. Now, we can do that. There are currently, I think, 1.3 million people who are under orders of removal. We're just not removing them. So we can start there. Tom can take his existing force and start doing that. But what we need to do in the House and the Senate is use the reconciliation process. I support a two-pronged approach, deal with tax and spending later in the spring, start in January, give the president what he needs in terms of tools to the reconciliation process to beef up Border Patrol, beef up ICE, build the wall, fund 287G programs to work with local law enforcement, coordinate, remove, and get folks out. One final component. We also have to deal with fees. We should be taxing remittances, the dollars that flow out of America to Mexico and other countries. But we should also apply parole fees and fees for work permit authorizations to collect revenue to deal with all of the processing we're going to have to do when we face legal challenges about all of the unlawfully released individuals into our country. They're going to claim they're lawfully present. We're going to say, not so fast. The Biden administration unlawfully, illegitimately dumped these people to the United States in violation of our existing laws. Our Trump administration is going to have to fight through that. We need to give the resources to do that. And I believe Tom Homan will be appropriately aggressive. Let's remove criminals. Let's remove the people with removal orders that are already present. Let's jail criminals and remove them. And then let's remove the people who came here who are gotaways. And then let's process all of the people with notices to appear, go through it, do it quickly, and let's get people out. And if you apply the fees, they'll be self-pressured to deport. Sorry for the filibuster, but that's the deal.
No, this is exactly what I wanted to know. So will this mostly be carried out by ICE or by local law enforcement?
So I think it's going to be a mix. And in fact, it should be a mix. Historically, you've had a great collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE. Now, in jurisdictions where local law enforcement want to enforce the law and are able to enforce the law, which are, by the way, most jurisdictions, then those should work with ICE and will work with ICE. And the administration will set up the framework to do that. You find somebody who's unlawfully present, boom, get them, let's remove them. But then when you've got jurisdictions that are recalcitrant, that are sanctuary cities, that don't want to work with us, California has threatened it. You obviously have the mayor out there in Denver. Then, yes, Tom is correct. And you saw a recent Ninth Circuit ruling by a court, by the way, that said we do have the right to step in and remove, irrespective of what the local law enforcement and the local politicians are saying. So Tom is correct. They have to get out of the way. And look, I'm a federalist. I don't like that generally. But when the previous administration has made our country unsafe, has put dangerous individuals, released criminals, released terrorists, and done so knowingly, then the federal government has a job and a duty to make sure we're removing those people and getting them out of our country. And they've got to be able to do that.
Okay, so when it comes to identifying people who are here illegally, the government has the records, local law enforcement as well as federal law enforcement. We can tell on paper the names of people who are here unlawfully. How were they found? Because you're going to hear the left say, oh, you can't just stop someone of Latino descent on the street and ask them if they're legal or illegal. That's going to be, by the way, one of their biggest lines of attack is you're trying to stereotype all Latinos here. How do you find this out? Are you going to go through employers to say like, hey, you didn't verify their citizenship status? I know you said start with criminals, but how is that done?
Well, first of all, when you've got criminals who have been arrested, then you figure out if they've got an ICE detainer placed on them. Then you know when they've served their time. It could be 3 months, 6 months. It might be longer. Then you've got that ICE detainer. As soon as they're released from their time in jail, then remove them. So that's an important step. And this ICE, empowered by hopefully our funding and Tom Homan and the president, will do that. But you also go through, and like I said, the 1.3 million people who have orders for removal, they've already been processed and they've been told, you got to go. But we don't have ICE currently enforcing that, grabbing them and getting rid of them. So we do that. I mean, then you focus on, there are people who are gotaways, right? Who have no papers. They have no notice to appear. So when you find them through I-9 records and E-Verify, where it's in place in different states, when you run across them when they go file for some benefit and you identify, hey, you're here and you're illegal, this administration will be able to work with local law enforcement to find them. There are always people who are stopped for speeding, for DUI, for whatever it is. You find out, are you a citizen or not? Or, do you have papers? Are you legally here? If you're not, boom, go to ICE, let's remove them. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way it historically worked. That's the way it worked really all the way up through even Jay Johnson under Obama. But no, Biden and this world in Mayorkas, they threw out all of the rule of law, stopped enforcing the law, and they just processed people and released them in the country. We have to undo that damage.
Do you anticipate, you mentioned self-deportations before, do you anticipate that happening if employers are disincentivized from hiring illegal aliens in the first place?
Sure. I mean, I think it goes without saying. I mean, first of all, we're already seeing numbers down in the Darien Gap, according to the great reporting of Todd Bensman and others that know it. We're seeing those numbers go down. Why? Because the world is looking at this going, crap, Trump's there. I guess we can't come in now. So that's already happening. If you start enforcing the law here, and if you start, enforcing it with employers, if you start applying fees that will cost money to people who are here, saying, look, you're sitting here waiting for a notice to appear. We got to go hire judges to process your claims of asylum or to claim whatever your parole situation is. Great. You need to go find some money to help us fund all that. And if you do that, then people are going to sort of feel the pressure and they're going to self-deport. We need to create that pressure valve. If someone really wants to be here, they came here, they believe it was legitimate, they have a legitimate asylum claim, we'll be able to figure that out. But that is such a tiny fraction of the 5.5 million plus that have been released into our country, plus the 2 million gotaways, plus the other numbers that have come in, upwards of 10 million, then that's a tiny fraction. Let's remove the people who need to be removed. Final point, though. It's not just the criminals. It is the fact that we have so many people that are on the social welfare state in our country. They come here for free health care. They come here for free education. They come here for free benefits. They get on welfare, SNAP, food stamps. All of these things are magnets, and including employment by people who don't check. So we need to increase that check with employment and make sure that we're no longer putting people on benefits. That's an important piece to this. Apply the fees, and I forgot to mention that earlier. Take illegals off benefits. All of that has to be a part of it.
There's also the census issue, and I wonder if Congress will consider any amendment to our census process, because it seems obvious to me that the left's strategy in encouraging all the illegal immigration is because when a census is taken and illegal aliens are counted, especially in blue districts, it can then cause more representatives from that particular district, meaning it can increase the number of Democratic reps in the House, which obviously gives the Democrats more political power. Is there any appetite in Congress to amend that process?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, this last year, we brought to the floor legislation that would have done that, and unfortunately, Democrats voted against it. But we now have the House and the Senate, so hopefully we'll be able to move it through. We'll need 60 votes in the Senate for something like that. But we should call the question. We should put it over there. We should move the SAVE Act, the bill that I introduced, to require documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Frankly, we ought to tweak that stuff with respect to elections to get it closer to same-day voting. Make sure that it's, or either paper ballots or some other mechanism we can trust to make sure that we have don't have broad, mail-in ballots, that we tighten early voting down to 0 or just a few days. All of those things are things we can do to tighten our overall election system, make sure all these citizens are voting, check IDs. All of this has federal purview because we're talking about federal elections. We should do that, and then we can actually believe in the system again.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. The American people are on the side of safety in America, and that requires the mass deportation. Let me turn and ask you about Doge. Molly Hemingway at the Federalist had a report about you a couple days ago. She was talking about, the Republican caucus getting together and the excitement among Republican representatives for Doge. And the report was that you stood up in front of all of your Republican colleagues and said you're excited to the Republicans about Doge, but you're actually the ones that keep voting for all this spending. You are what Doge is going to cut. Could you verify the accuracy of this story for us?
Well, I try to avoid talking about private meetings, and that was a private meeting with Elon and Vivek and the Republican conference. Molly reported that there were some other people who validated it with sources in the room. So let me put it this way: I will not impugn the character of Molly Hemingway in that she in any way was inaccurately reporting what she had sources for. Here's what I will say on the record here, which is that concept, right? That the Republicans that want to hide behind Doge is real. And look, I love my colleagues, right? We get along, but look, the dirt is on our hands, right? We have, as Republicans writ large for the last 3 decades, we have $36 trillion of debt, a lot of which was mounted on our watch. So we either need to get serious about cutting spending and cutting the bureaucracy, or we're going to be thrown out on our ear. That's just the simple reality. So I'm just trying to remind people, these guys at Doge, they're going to do great work. They're going to identify stuff. They're going to have AI. They're going to put stuff out, crowdsource it. They're going to give a laundry list of things we can cut. Great. We should do that. But we're going to need to get busy and do that. We're going to need to cut the spending levels. We're also going to need to stop passing more programs to spend more money. Those same Republicans in that same room, 2/3 of them voted to shorten the time that Social Security is going to go bankrupt by passing a $200 billion bill that was unpaid for, right? We're going to be dealing with the disaster supplemental next week. God bless the people in North Carolina. There are people in tents and campers. I want to help them. Samaritan's Purse is doing a great job. There is a role for the federal government in emergencies like that, but it can't be a blank check. You can't not pay for it. And that's what we do as a Congress, and we have to stop doing it. So work with Doge, work with OMB. We got to deal with the tax policy that we want, but we've got to drive deficits down by cutting waste and spending. Look in the mirror,
May I say, sir, brilliant diplomacy. Very, very, very very strategic articulation of that. I obviously agree with you 100%. Over in the Senate, there's pretty obvious effort by establishment Republicans to stonewall the Trump mandate. What feeling do you get among your colleagues in the House? Is there that same resistance to essentially their base, or are they excited to move forward with the Trump agenda?
Well, look, I think I'm still looking at the Senate as they're working through this process. And there's some reflexive Senatitis, I call it, right? Where that's like, ooh, we're the senator. We go every 6 years. We're the upper chamber. Okay, all right, well, good for you. Pat yourself on the back. All right, now you got to do your job. And when they go have these interviews and they meet Pete Hegseth and they sit down and they talk and they go through the process, they go, all right, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe the president's right. Yeah, maybe the president's right that this town needs disruption. Maybe the president knows something after going through this election process and getting elected, going through all of this, and now nominating people who are not of the normal, groups here, not the cocktail circuit, right? Tulsi is different and a disruptor. Bobby Kennedy is very different and a disruptor. Pete Hegseth, different, disruptor. That's a good thing. So there is, I think, a hunger for that among large blocs in the House and the Senate, however, the uniparty still exists. The powers that be, the things that have always been, pat you on the head, you don't understand, young sir, is like, hold on a second. Yes, we do understand. You're spending too much money. You're leaving the borders wide open. The military-industrial complex is creating endless wars, and that needs to stop. We need a modern military that has the tools to carry out their job, but is sparingly used, deterrent. And we need strong diplomacy, and we need to restore healthcare freedom and energy freedom and get these regulations out of the way. We need to deliver. And if we do that, Republicans will usher in a new era of prosperity, and I think we can.
We've talked about this a lot on the show, and this is my last question for you. How effective is it? I want to hear your perspective from inside Congress. How effective is it when constituents raise their voices, email, and call the offices of their elected representatives? Does that change the minds of how Congress members behave and vote?
No question that it does. Now, as these technology changes and we get more stuff via email or social media or responses to Twitter or X or whatever, the method changes a bit, right? If you asked me 20 years ago, I would tell you it's burn the phones down. Now it's kind of a mix. Yes, call in. Also send in emails and push back on social media. But yes, the phone calls matter. I mean, look, I will tell you an example. In 2007, when there was a massive amnesty bill that had, was being cloaked as a border security bill with, not amnesty, but it was amnesty. The American people were frustrated. They were like, don't do this. And they wanted a wall built. Now, remember back then, nobody would build the wall until President Trump came along and said, hey, we're building a wall, got elected. They wouldn't do it. So they started mailing the people started mailing bricks in to members of Congress, literally piles of bricks. And look, members of Congress got the message. I remember a couple of senators coming into a meeting with President Bush saying, Mr. President, we can't be with you. This bill is not where it needs to be for the American people. So they listen. So you should engage. You should share what you think. Look, I know my constituents aren't afraid to let me know if I get out of line, and that's the way it should be, right? Whether I agree with them or not, what I'm doing, and I represent them in a republic, so I have to do what I think is right to represent them, and then they have every right to tell me they agree or disagree. Thankfully, more times than not, they tell me they agree, and I'm been happy to be reelected. So.
Well, there you go. It's something we've been talking about often on the show because I feel like there's a unique moment for the American people to be involved in almost every minute detail of this administration.
Yep.
I know you have a vote or a meeting or something important that you need to get to. Congressman Chip Roy, thank you for joining us on the show. You're welcome anytime. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Liz. God bless you. Merry Christmas, and thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you too. Okay, guys, we have other topics to talk about on the show today. Today's show is sponsored by First Cut Coffee. If you guys haven't tried this, go. They have patriotic flavors you're going to love. Firstcup.com, promo code Liz. You can get 10% off your first order. That's firstcup.com, promo code Liz for 10% off your order. Okay, if you're an industry nerd, and I know I am, a lot of you guys watching are as well, you heard the big industry news yesterday that Brett Cooper, former host of the comment section, has left the Daily Wire. She announced it yesterday on an episode of her show. She said she left of her own volition. She is going to pursue other things. And I have a couple thoughts about this. I know you guys probably do too. So we're going to spend a little time talking about this. We're also going to talk about Caitlyn Clark, WNBA star, women's basketball wonderkin. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some of the funniest posts on X from today. So Brett Cooper has left the Daily Wire. There were some rumors in the last couple weeks, some videos that were posted on TikTok. A couple of them even went viral. Some reports that Brett Cooper was having some issues at the Daily Wire, that maybe she was going to leave. A lot of people didn't know if it was true or if it wasn't true. They didn't know what was going to happen. And yesterday, Brett Cooper began her video by saying it is the rumors that you might have heard. Most of them, many of them are true. She said today, meaning yesterday, was her last day at the Daily Wire, her last day hosting the comment section, and that she would be moving on to other things. So the big question on a lot of our minds is, what is she going to do next? I think the answer to that is TBD. She'll announce to us what she's going to do sometime pretty soon. She does have a new YouTube account. I highly recommend that you support her. Go to youtube.com, go to B Brett Cooper. It's basically the double B at the beginning, double B Brett Cooper, and subscribe. She's going to post her announcement, I would assume, on that YouTube channel sometime here in the near future. And I think you guys can let me know in the comments section what you think is going to happen. Derek Cannon on YouTube live chat says, "Is Liz expecting?" Really? This blazer makes me look fat? I just gave birth 8 months ago. Give me a little time. I am not. Although it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? You guys can tell me what you guess is Brett Cooper, what she's going to do next. I think whatever it is, it's going to be extraordinary. Listen, Brett is a friend of mine. She's a lovely woman, a smart woman, a grounded woman, a principled woman, a loving wife, a loyal friend. I've actually known Brett. She and I are a little bit different in age. She's actually the age of my youngest sister, who's 13 years younger than me. But Brett and I have been friends for a while. I met her back in 2020 or early 2021. It might have been January of 2021, actually, when Washington, D.C. was all locked down from COVID. Remember when you had to have a Vax card, a Vax passport just to get into restaurants in Washington, D.C.? Well, I'd gone to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. I was going to host a live episode of my show from the Pro-Life Summit the next day at the March for Life. And I couldn't do any of the social things because, as you guys know, I refused the COVID vax. And so I couldn't get into any of the restaurants or any of the social activities, except for one restaurant in Washington, D.C. was bucking the public health order. They even had a condemned sign nailed to the outside. I forget the name of it. If anybody remembers the name of that restaurant, you can hit me up in the chat. But we went to that restaurant, and ironically, it was on my oldest daughter's first birthday. We took her to a bar because it's like a sports bar grill. That's what you had to climb up this rickety set of stairs to get into it. And we took my 1-year-old daughter to this bar. It was her first birthday, but I had to work in Washington, D.C. And we brought Brett Cooper along. She was interning at the time for one of my colleagues. And it was that day that I met her. And I remember her, being so sweet with my daughter. And we've kept in communication since then. And like I said, I don't have to tell you that she is a talent, a unique talent. You can see that from her breadth of work. I personally think it's a combination of, I'm partial to homeschoolers. If you homeschool your kids, man, they are just the most well-rounded, functional, principled, smart, articulate people. And Brett Cooper, I don't need to tell you, has changed a lot of people's hearts and minds. She is a unique force, especially among her audience, which is Gen Zers. I mean, it's hard to capture the attention of Gen Z, especially when talking about politics, especially talking about conservative politics, and she's done it. So I'm incredibly proud of her, not just for her professional life, but who she is as a person. Again, I highly recommend that you subscribe. Go to youtube.com /B Brett Cooper. We can post the link in our live chat too, just so that the vanity URL isn't too confusing. Listen, she's going to make an announcement, I would guess, in the near future. It's going to be soon. And I suspect that she is very excited about what is to come and that you will be as well. So industry gossip is industry gossip. You can let me know. You can let me know in the chat what you think. The Dream says, have Brett as a guest soon. It's funny. Before Brett launched her show at Daily Wire, I actually did interview her. It was one of her practice interviews for prepping to go on air. I think it's still on YouTube. You guys can go check that out. But it was very early on before she had her show at Comment Section. Listen, Comment Section was a great show. I enjoyed watching it too. But go to her YouTube account. I know she'd really appreciate that. And give her a follow on social media as well. All right, we're going to talk about Caitlyn Clark. This story has been trending all over X. People care about this a lot. I think we're all burned pretty badly by the wokeness in the NFL a few years ago, the Colin Kaepernick stuff, the kneeling for the national anthem, turning your back on the flag stuff. And it seems like that wokeness had been somewhat exercised from professional sports. But then we have Caitlyn Clark here, who is bending a knee to wokeness, and the reaction online just shows this like visceral, or the reaction is visceral. It shows this visceral rejection of wokeness. So we're going to talk about exactly why Caitlyn Clark capitulated in a moment when wokeness is kind of on the decline. So she didn't need to She didn't need to capitulate. Why did she do it? I have a theory that I want to share with you. But first, I want to talk to you about ExpressVPN. Guys, a few decades ago, private citizens used to be, well, largely that, private. What changed since then? The internet, for better or for worse. Think about everything that you've browsed, everything you've searched for, watched, tweeted. Now imagine all of that data about you being crawled, collected, and aggregated by data brokers into a permanent public record, your record. Having your private life exposed for others to see was once something only celebrities had to worry about, but now, in an era where everyone is online all the time, everyone is a public figure. The best solution to this problem is ExpressVPN. My team has used ExpressVPN for a long time for this reason. Privacy is very important to me. Think about what we do here, you and I. We communicate with sources. We talk to people off the record. We have to research nasty topics, and we don't want ads popping up on our devices after we search for show-related stories. Not to mention, I'm in the public eye, and I have to be super extra careful about my personal information. Let me tell you, everybody should be using ExpressVPN because it protects you from data brokers who want to track you through your computer's IP address. Not to mention, your IP address also reveals your location, which is creepy. But thanks to ExpressVPN, your IP address is hidden. You have privacy, so try as they might. If you have ExpressVPN, data brokers have a more difficult time monitoring, tracking, and monetizing your private online activity. So buy ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is the best VPN on the market because you know your data is protected and it can give you peace of mind wherever you are. ExpressVPN encrypts 100% of your network traffic, keeps it safe from hackers. ExpressVPN works on all of your devices, phone, laptop, tablet, you name it. You just tap one button to turn it on. Voila, you're good to go. It's that easy. You're protected. I value privacy. I know you do too. That's why I endorse ExpressVPN. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/Liz. That's expressvpn.com/Liz. And you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/Liz. All right, Caitlyn Clark, the Wonder Kid. She is a WNBA player and actually brought attention to women's professional basketball. I mean, let's be real, maybe for the first time ever. I say this respectfully because my youngest sister was an NCAA, she graduated, but was an NCAA women's basketball player. So I do have a soft spot in my heart for women's basketball. I'm not going to sit up here like some people and mock the sport. In fact, if I had to pick a sport, a college sport, that's probably the one I followed the closest because I had a personal vested interest in women's basketball. But by and large, of course, men's sports garner higher viewership than women's sports do. Caitlyn Clark has brought attention to the WNBA so much so that she was recently given the honor of being Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year. I think we have a picture of this. We can show this on the screen. She was given Time Magazine's Athletes of the Year, which is going to increase her profile even more than the profile she already enjoys. She was interviewed extensively for this article, and she gave the interviewer the following quote. I'm going to read it to you. This is the woke quote that I was talking about at the beginning of the show. She says, quote, "I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been black players. This league has kind of been built on them. The more we appreciate that, highlight that, talk about that, and then continue to have brands and companies invest in those players that have made this league incredible, I think it's very important. I have to continue to try to change that. The more we can elevate black women, that's going to be a beautiful thing." She is receiving widespread backlash for that because it's just wokeness. Essentially apologizing for being white, talking about having white privilege, talking about trying to pressure brands and companies to elevate black women. Listen, no one should care about skin color. You elevate someone based on the merits of their actions. What happened to content of character versus color of the skin? We're so far past. Wokeness tried to completely obliterate the Martin Luther King ideal for our country. And honestly, if you look especially at what happened with the Daniel Penny prosecution and this very insipid BLM response, it seems like our country has an appetite to get past that wokeness. We see collectively that it's toxic. We see that it's poison. We see that it's race baiting for profit and for evil ideology, and people are over it. They're done with it. Wokeness is on the decline. So why on earth would Caitlyn Clark engage in this kind of narrative? Why would she say something like this when she didn't need to? It's not 2020 anymore where these professional athletes are under this enormous amount of pressure to be woke or face social ostracization. Why is she doing this? Well, I think I have an answer for you why she's doing this, but let's just clarify a couple of things that she said. She said that the WNBA was built on the back of black women. Actually, the WNBA is built on the back of the NBA, who for years subsidized it. So it's not actually built on the back of black women. It's built on the back of male professional athletes who play basketball for the NBA. And here's my question too. Maybe in 2020, you would get a ton of backlash for asking this, but kudos to any of you who did ask this at the time. And it's a very relevant question. Here it is. What advantage does a white person have over a black person in 2024? What rights do white people enjoy in 2024 that black people don't? What institutional racism do black people suffer from in 2024 that white people don't? The answer to that is there is no legal racism aimed at black people in our country. There is institutional discrimination against white people in our country, but there's no such thing as white privilege the way that Caitlyn Clark is describing it. In fact, the extra based take on this is in sports, especially professional sports, it's harder for a white person to succeed than a black person because black people, especially, I mean, look at a basketball court. Black people are inherently better at basketball than white people are. That's simply obvious to anybody who has a pair of eyes. Okay, so why then is Caitlyn Clark feeling this pressure to publicly virtue signal, to be woke? My sister, as I mentioned, an NCAA basketball player, she just graduated. She said she wasn't surprised when she saw this quote from Caitlyn Clark. I showed it to her after I had read the story. She said Caitlyn Clark didn't switch from being a conservative to a liberal. She said Caitlyn Clark has always been woke. She's just been quieter about it. She just hasn't made a big public statement, but it's kind of widely known that Caitlyn Clark was woke. Again, that brings us to the question, why now? Why did she feel that she needed to make this statement now? Well, the answer to that, of course, is that being a prominent professional basketball player, she is most likely being offered millions of dollars in sports contracts, maybe with Nike or some other sports related company. And those companies are still suffering from wokeness, and perhaps she's required to kiss the ring. So it's not really about ideology. Maybe she's not a committed BLM Marxist the way that Colin Kaepernick is, but it's about money. And this is the thing. The Black Lives Matter movement has always been comprised of three factions of people: the committed ideologues, like the founders or like Colin Kaepernick, the fools who fall for it. So a lot of the people who were marching or had the marching in Black Lives Matter riots or who had the black square on their Instagram accounts. And then the third faction is money grubbers, the grifters who are just race baiting in order to profit off of them. So basically what Caitlyn Clark has done here is she has simply switched factions. She switched from a fool who fell prey to this wokeness, and now she is in the money grubber category, that she's fine engaging in this kind of race baiting if it profits her. Well, let me just say, race baiting in and of itself is grotesque. Race baiting for money is downright evil, and we should all tell Caitlyn Clark exactly that. We should hold her accountable for her behavior. Okay, now for some of the funniest posts on X from today. These are really good ones. I actually think that stand-up comedy has taken a hit because of X, because people are so funny on X. There's not a day goes by that I'm not scrolling through my X profile laughing my head off at some of your guys' smart and hilarious quips here. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk to you about what we do here at Blaze TV. We have moved past the presidential election, although we haven't gotten to the inauguration yet. For most of us, just getting past the election is a huge weight off our shoulders. But our journey does not end here. Our journey is just beginning. And Blaze TV is going to be here to take that journey right alongside with you. You and I are going to be standing side by side as we reclaim our country. Mainstream news outlets distort and deceive, but Blaze TV is committed to delivering the truth to people like you, people who love and fight for the American way of life. We refuse to be controlled or silenced. That's why we are kindred spirits. Our independent platform is more crucial than ever going into the next 4 years, and it is going to be a wild and interesting ride. If you haven't joined us already, we would love to bring you along with us. Please become a member today. Unlock everything that Blaze TV has to offer with sound political analysis and perspective and a healthy dose of fun. Blaze TV is your home away from home, and your extended family. Come and join us for the next adventure. Go to blazetv.com/Wheeler and get 20% off. If you love the show and you support what Blaze TV stands for, this is your chance to get even more involved in something special. That's blazetv.com/Wheeler to get $20 off. And if you take me up on this offer, tag me on X, tag me on Instagram. I want to welcome you to the family. I want to talk to you. Okay, guys, let's talk about the funniest posts on X for the day. And if you have any that you have bookmarked, that you've liked, that you've retweeted, hit me up in the comment section. We're live on X right now. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. Let me know what you have seen. Okay, we are bringing this up right now. I'm bringing them up right now. I kept a record of them today, the ones that made me laugh. Okay, so the first one is, we're going to show this on the screen right now. This is from someone named Dan Baltic. I have no idea who Dan Baltic is. Maybe he's famous. Maybe he's not. Never heard of him before. And I mean that, I don't mean that in an insulting way or not. I just don't know this guy. But his tweets made me laugh my head off. He said, BLM trying to spark a protest over Daniel Penny is like watching a 45-year-old trying to pick up girls at an EDM concert. Just stop, bro. Think about that video we watched yesterday, after we were talking about Daniel Penny and we showed the video of the Black Lives Matter protest, and they didn't have a spine. They just looked weak. And part of me, don't get me wrong, was happy that they're not, throwing Molotov cocktails at police cars anymore. They're not looting high-end clothing stores, that they're not burning Black-owned businesses. I'm happy about that. Believe me. But at the same time, the Black Lives Matter movement, I posted on X and I said, I think we're going to look back at this moment in history, and this is the beginning of the demise of the Black Lives Matter movement. They've been exposed. Their ideology is evil. Their claims are false. They're engaging in race baiting for profit because they're grifters. And the American people aren't falling prey to that anymore. They're not worried that they're going to be branded as a racist because they know they are not. And yeah, now watching Black Lives Matter is as pathetic as watching an old dude try to talk to young girls in a bar. Hilarious. Dan Baltic, you win our funniest post on X for the day. Next up is Luigi versus the pipe bomber. This is, I would say, less haha funny and more put on your conspiracy theory hat for this one. Chicago Ray says, just to be clear, how did the FBI nab this guy? There's a picture of Luigi in 3 days, but still hasn't gotten the guy who planted pipe bombs on January 5th in 4 years. And on the right is a picture of the masked guy who planted the pipe bombs. Does that kind of give you a chill up your spine? This is where my conspiracy hat goes on. And remember, a conspiracy theory is only a conspiracy theory for like a year when the mainstream media is trying to insult us until we are proven correct. How is it that we know all of the background of Luigi Mangione, the assassin of United Health CEO Brian Thompson, and yet we know nothing about Thomas Crooks, the would-be assassin who shot the president in the ear in Butler, Pennsylvania at his rally on July 13th, even though Thomas Crooks had, 5 or 6 cell phones? How do we know nothing about that guy's background and everything about Luigi? How do we know nothing about this guy? We have pictures and videos of this guy planting a pipe bomb 4 years ago. Well, it brings up the question, of course, has something been hidden from us? And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can also see the writing on the wall. The writing on the wall tells me, yeah, something has been hidden from us. There's something that the deep state doesn't want us to know about the pipe bomber. Again, you're probably thinking, Liz, you said you were going to bring up funny posts on X. Well, this one made me think. This one really was pointed. This one was really one that I was like, yes, this one. Why don't we know anything about this guy? You guys can tell me why you think we don't know anything about this guy. The pipe bomber, that is, not Luigi. If you want to know my working theory on what motivated Luigi Mangione, you can watch yesterday's live stream, yesterday's episode. I break it down. Some people aren't happy with what I consider to be the conclusion that the evidence we have now shows. And I say that in a very specific way because we could collect more evidence as the days go by that paints a different picture of Luigi Mangione. But based on what we know now about him, it seems pretty evident to me that he was motivated by a combination of, he has chronic debilitating back pain. And no, let me preempt you guys, that doesn't motivate someone to commit homicide, but it does make someone, or can make someone, hopeless if they're in this chronic debilitating back pain. There are reports that Luigi Mangione couldn't sustain relationships. His roommate or his landlord, I don't know how a landlord would know this, but maybe Luigi was an oversharer, that he couldn't have sex. So maybe he's depressed. Maybe he's lonely. Maybe he's isolated. That leads young men down a dark path. He also embraced an evil ideology, an anti-capitalist ideology. The logical conclusion of such an evil ideology is committing violence. So you combine those two things with his godlessness, meaning there's no understanding that earthly suffering can have eternal reward. And you combine that with possible drug use. He had back surgery. Surely he was on painkillers. There was also reports that he did shrooms, ayahuasca, which some people have described as a kill shot to the brain. It seems to me that that was the motivation behind his murder here, that there's not a larger conspiracy, but we'll see as the day goes on. We will see. All right, on to, this is not on X, this is on Truth Social. Senator Fetterman joined Trump's Truth Social. This guy, you just don't know what to think of this guy. He's changed so much since he got to the US Senate. But this is what he posted on Truth Social. He already has like, what is it, 25,000 followers in just a couple of hours since he joined. He said, my first truth, and he said the Trump hush money and Hunter Biden cases were both BS, and pardons are appropriate. Weaponizing the judiciary for blatant partisan gain diminishes the collective faith in our institutions and sows further divisions. He paired that with a screenshot of an MSNBC headline that said Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg responds to Trump's motion to dismiss the hush money case. So this is the interesting thing about Fetterman, is he's not woke. He's not been completely captured by this radical leftist ideology, but he's also not fully red pilled. He might actually be the only member of the US Congress, upper or lower house, who is in this unique circumstance where he's not either a committed right winger, an establishment figure, or captured by wokeism. And I have great, great hope for anybody, whether you're in Congress or not, who is in this camp. Because I think as long as you are not committed to wokeism, then you are most likely going to eventually get to the good side if you are committed to following the truth. And so I love to see this from Senator Fetterman. I don't agree that the Hunter Biden cases were BS. I think you probably don't agree with that either. There is abundant evidence that Hunter Biden was the bag man in the Biden family crime syndicate. They were selling access to Biden as VP and president, and Hunter Biden was collecting the money after they sold access to Biden. That's pretty obvious. We have emails proving that. So I don't know how this case would be BS. So Fetterman's not right about that. But if he has gotten to the point where he can say that the Trump hush money case is BS, then he's taken the first step away from the Democrat Party. I think we should be incredibly welcoming to John Fetterman. I think that we should encourage him and invite him to join us. Join the Republican Party. Join us here on the right. Because on the right, remember, we can have dissenting viewpoints on some issues. We do not have the same requirement to walk in ideological lockstep like the left does. We actually are independent thinkers, and we debate, we argue. I mean, think about the difference between a committed libertarian and someone who believes in ordered liberty. Both of those viewpoints are right now under the umbrella of the Republican Party, even though they are actually entirely different worldviews. So John Fetterman, you are welcome among us Republicans in the conservative movement. We would love to have you. We'd also love to have you on the show. We would love to hear your story and your thoughts on a vast array of issues. So that is you are always welcome to be on the show. We'd love to have you. Guys, do you think he was going to be, drop this in the comments. Do you think that he's going to become a Republican? Do you think he'll be the next Tulsi Gabbard, the next RFK? Do you think that he will actually make the jump? That would be huge, huge. I think he'll vote regularly for the Trump agenda, even as a Democrat in the Senate. But do you think he will officially change party affiliation? I'm going to call it now and say, yes, I think he will. All right, Governor Trudeau, which of course is his given name. That is his official legal name, and we are therefore required to call him that. Governor Trudeau of the 51st state of Canada. He's mad. He's big mad at President Trump for coining this nickname. And so what does he do? What does he do to act out like the petulant teenager that he is? He just wants everyone in the world to know that he's very different than President Trump. He wants everyone in the world to know that he, unlike Trump, is a proud feminist. I'm not making this up. Take a look at this.
No, it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
What a loser. What an absolute loser. Did you ever stop to think that maybe it's sexist? Maybe it's completely sexist if you vote for a woman because she's a woman. Maybe that's actually the most demeaning way to vote, because you were reducing that woman to what, her genitalia? You're not voting for her because you think she's qualified. You're not voting for her based on her experience. You're not voting for her based on her record as a politician or her ideology. You're voting for her as a condescending pat on the head, like, we want you to have a turn because you're a girl. Maybe that's the most sexist thing that you can possibly do, and that's what Trudeau is advocating for. So yeah, I mean, he is a proud feminist. I reject the label of feminist. I think feminists are anti-woman. I think anybody who espouses the feminist ideology is actually not just anti-woman, they're anti-femininity, which is something that God has endowed in all women. So you could argue that ideological feminists are anti-humanity for that reason. So Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau, sir, if you want to claim that label, we're just going to expose exactly what feminism is, because feminism has made life worse for women. Women are unhappier now than in any time that happiness among women has been measured in U.S. history. They are unhealthier now than at any time in U.S. history. Women actually are happiest when they are an active part of running a household and raising and rearing their children, when they are wives and mothers. And oh my goodness, gasp all you want, Governor Trudeau. That's simply the fact of the matter. And it's not a demeaning thing to say to women. Women are the heart and soul of the household. They have the, what is it that, I actually forget, maybe Tim remembers who I'm quoting here, but Father Rippiger once quoted some great saint that said, the privilege of woman is forming the mind of men, which is a deeper way of saying the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. Men and women are different, and it's a beautiful complementary thing. It is the opposite of demeaning to celebrate women making choices that are in line with true femininity. But Justin Trudeau knows nothing about that, because he, my friends, is a proud feminist. He is a proud feminist. All right, Biden's HHS. We need to talk about this more. We're going to just talk about this briefly today. Biden's HHS is trying to shank RFK Jr. on their way out the door. There's really no better way to describe it. Biden's HHS has extended liability to manufacturers of the COVID mRNA jabs, meaning right now those vaccine manufacturers cannot be held accountable for any injuries sustained as a result of that experimental mRNA jab. And this liability shield was given to these vaccine manufacturers under the guise of a, quote, health emergency. Well, Biden's HHS has extended this so-called health emergency through the year 2029. So the manufacturers of the COVID mRNA jab now, or still, cannot be held accountable for any vaccine injuries through the year 2029. The question that we'll investigate, we're going to talk about this more because we're not going to let them get away with this, is how can this be reversed? What can be done about this? And what accountability can those manufacturers face, given what we all know to be true about those COVID mRNA vaccines? Talk about trying to kneecap RFK before he gets there. But something tells me he's not going to allow himself to be kneecapped. It is going to be a joy to behold when that man takes the reign at Biden's HHS. And by the way, you and I are going to have a pivotal role to play when he goes through his confirmation hearings, because Big Pharma, pays off a lot of politicians, and those politicians are going to be the ones questioning him and voting for him in his confirmation hearing. You heard what Chip Roy said in the beginning of the show. We have to make sure our voices are louder than the money jingling in the pockets of those politicians given to them by the pharma lobbyists. And if we make sure that we're louder than that jingling money, I think we'll be able to get RFK into HHS before we know it. And this kind of nonsense, harming the American people, is going to come to an end. All right, guys. Thank you for joining this live. As always, it's wonderful to interact with you. I appreciate all of your comments. Gail says, "Yep, give Fetterman a chance." Right? He's gonna join us, right? Just mark this. Mark my words. We'll come back to this. Daniel says, "Would you do a Q&A informal live stream or something?" Well, Daniel, go right ahead. Hit me with your questions. Yeah, we can do that more often. Everyone knows, or I should say, everyone should feel free. Hit me up with your questions throughout the show. I kind of keep an eye on the live chats as we go. But we can do it. We can do a more direct Q&A sometime. I think that would be fun. I think that would be really fun. Jason says, "Glad I did not get any of those shots." Yeah, I know, right? Me too. Eugene says, "Be blessed." Militant Wing says, "God bless and peace be with you all." I think that's a good note to end the show. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show, send it to your friends, share it far and wide so people who don't know about us can join this effort as well. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.